Hello again, and thanks for joining us for another ITS UK webinar when again we get a panel of ITS UK members to discuss the impact of the coronavirus crisis on their business and the industry in general, and we'll then have a chat about what it means for the industry and what we can do to make things better. So we have a great panel for you today. Let me first of all introduce Peter Eccleson, who is the owner of Smart Video and Sensing. And then we've got John Nightingale, who is from one of our newest members, JCT Consultancy, and Krishna Desai, who is Senior Marketing and Communications Representative at Cubic Transportation Systems and is also on the ITS UK Council as Communications Director. So that's our panel today. We've got two small and mediums enterprises, and then we have Krishna from one of the world's leading transport companies, and we'll find out what the effect of coronavirus has been on different parts of the business. So let's first of all join Peter Eccleson, owner of Smart Video and Sensing. And Peter, I guess it's been a really tough time for you if what you do involves going out and going on the network, and that's something you've been banned from doing.
That's correct, Paul. It's been a difficult decision for us to have to stand the staff down on furlough as well because of the restrictions placed on us at the moment. Clearly, all the work that we had in the pipeline, which was primarily around installation work, has been put on hold. And from a sales perspective, you know, we're constantly sort of visiting local authorities and government bodies. We can't do that either. So that's meant that basically the business has ground to a halt at this moment in time.
So when you say ground to a halt, is there anything you can be doing at the moment, or is it genuinely just playing a waiting game and hoping that you can get back trading as soon as possible?
Well, under the government's furlough rules, and I said that's a difficult decision we had to take, I furloughed all of my staff with the exception of myself. So I'm basically doing everything right now, steering the ship and running the accounts and everything else. Under the regulations, staff cannot do anything for the business under furlough, not even answer an email. So all of their email accounts are redirected to myself, and their mobile phones are all redirected to me as well. And in fact, I've taken the measure, if you like, or the move of removing mobile phones and laptops and having them returned to the office in Waterlooville.
So we're doing a survey at the moment on behalf of the Department for Transport with lots of different members of different sizes and different parts of the industry for ITS UK. There is a genuine sense that if this goes on for a while, there is a fear for the future of the business. Is that something that you think you can cope with? Or do you think that if this lasts more than 3-6 weeks and starts going on through the summer and into the autumn, this could have critical long-term effects for SVS?
Absolutely. The old saying, Paul, cash is king. And we have to earn revenue to keep our business going. We have wages, bills to meet, etc. It's alleviated slightly at the moment with furlough, obviously, but we're yet to see when any cash is coming our way. But yeah, absolutely. You know, it's going to be a case also at the end of this of picking up where we left off. And whilst, as I said earlier, we've got some planned works, we've also got some other works which were in the pipeline, and as of today, unknowns. Whether they'll go ahead or not, we don't know what the government's going to do in terms of its budget. You know, it's obviously spending a lot of money on this. You know, are they going to start cutting schemes? You know, it's another big issue for us.
Okay, we'll come back to Peter in a moment, but let me just pick up with another SME. Let's speak to John Nightingale, because John, we always speak at the JCT Traffic Signal Symposium that takes place every September, and we'll come to that in a moment. But first of all, most of the time when I speak to you on the phone, you are somewhere in the country doing a training session with somebody. I take it that's just not happened, obviously. Have you been able to continue any training with your virtual solution, or have you had a real hit on business as well?
Well, obviously we're taking a hit on business, but unlike sadly Peter's position, I mean, we are doing our level best to keep as much of the business running at as normal a level as we possibly can. You're quite right that you know, one thing that has taken a hit is training, although we were lucky in one respect, in that we always took the stance that we would follow government advice. And literally just the week before the weekend Boris Johnson announced the lockdown, we were running I was running a suite of courses in Birmingham at Aston University. Now, it was a difficult decision, but we took the decision we would run the courses, that we would basically, we would stop face-to-face training when the government advised it, and particularly when they closed the schools. Now, literally, we managed to get those suite of courses in. Some people understandably basically cancelled at last minute. They sort of said, we don't really feel able to attend, or our bosses are telling us not to come. But nevertheless, the courses were well attended, and the very slight chance that anybody from Conference Aston may pick up on this, I must say a massive thank you to the staff at Conference Aston, because they were absolutely on top of the situation. There was barely half an hour went by when somebody wasn't coming around and cleaning door handles or wiping down handrails. They put special facilities on for providing the food, extra sort of biosecurity there. They were absolutely all over it, including giving us bigger training rooms for larger social distancing and everything. And the feedback we got from the courses was fantastic. Now, that means that at least we got sort of one decent hit in before we had to go into lockdown. But as you say, and as you're aware, fortunately, we started just before Christmas an online training offer. Now, it took us nearly 2 years to find a partner to give us the technology, if you like, to deliver Lindsay training online. But we've been working very closely with a company from California, who actually provide virtual machines on 3 servers around the world, one in the Netherlands, one in California, and one in Singapore. And they create virtual machines on these servers. We've got images of the Lindsay software up there, and people attending the courses, literally all they need is a laptop with an HTML5 browser. So they don't even need the software loaded onto the laptop. Now, we'd already run trials on that, and we'd already been running courses. We'd actually got some courses already advertised. Now, we've got a course running in May, and we've got one running in June. The bookings are not massive at the moment, but I think people are still trying to find their feet working from home and getting various permissions. But that, I'm sure, will come. But what we have done also is we've extended that offer now, where we can offer, if you like, in-house online courses. And we've already done 2 of these courses, and I've got more in the pipeline as well, where effectively they are, because most people have sent their staff home equipped with laptops, headsets like this. What we're literally doing is we're posting out training materials to individuals' houses, and they're joining courses on a Zoom conference call. And fingers crossed, hopefully we're going to weather some of that storm in terms of training. So the training initiative, I'm hoping that we can pick up on that. But yes, we have definitely taken a hit. Of course, what we are hoping is that when the restrictions finally get lifted, we're hoping, as indeed many businesses are, that there will be an upsurge in demand that will in some way at least make up for the revenue that we've lost.
Okay, thank you very much, John. We'll come back and talk Symposium with you in a moment, but let's bring Krishna in, because Krishna, obviously a global company like Cubic with operations everywhere in the world and different restrictions in different places in the world. How's it been for you?
I think it's been quite interesting. I think something like coronavirus really does unite the whole world with one common theme. And even though there's different restrictions in different areas, agencies all around the world are facing the same problems. And they're taking it in their stride. You know, they're losing revenue because ridership's declining, but they're actually promoting on all of their communications to encourage people not to use the public transport unless it's absolutely critical to get to where they need to. And it's actually a time where you're seeing everybody putting the end customer and people's safety and health before any bottom line revenue and profit, which is really endearing to see. So with us being global and having resources worldwide, we're trying to see how we can help agencies at a time like this, when it's more about keeping frontline staff safe and helping them to provide them with the resources that they may need to continue day to day. Any advice or partnership focus. We're also seeing less people travel on the roads because people aren't supposed to be traveling unless it's absolutely critical. And you see a lot of reports around the world, like China, saying that you can actually see the skies now because it was so full of congestion. It was so full of CO2 emissions and pollution that you couldn't see it. And I'd been in Beijing for a month, so I've dealt with that firsthand, where it just seems like it's humid all the time, and you can now kindly breathe fresh air. But what is going to be the outcome once coronavirus goes away and traffic resumes back to normal and people eventually start living their daily lives back as normal? And what solutions and capabilities will a lot of agencies around the world need to rebuild their cities and rebuild their communities, because it's going to be completely different to what it used to be?
Yeah, because we were talking in the last webinar about the fact that there's kind of this conflict between the fact that it appears as though the places worst hit have got the less good air quality. Should we put it that way? There are more emissions. The air quality is not as good in places like China, northern Italy, Madrid, New York. So there is a correlation, if we haven't yet proved any causation, between how severe the impact of the virus is and the air quality in the area. But of course, that means that we need to get more people onto public transport to reduce the number of vehicles moving around. Yet if you want to maintain social distancing, sitting in your own little pod of a car is going to be much better than cramming onto public transport. So that could have a negative effect on the environment.
I think it's true. And I also think if we take how the world has become teleworking and a lot of people are now working from home, it might not be a trend that we see going forward. I mean, I know in your last podcast, one of the guys you interviewed mentioned about the Olympics 2020 or 2012 when it happened in London, and how we had, I think it was 3 million people come into the UK and London to see the Olympics, and the system didn't come to a halt. It was still running smoothly because people were encouraged to work from home. There was promotion and advertising to get people the best way to their end location, which might not be, via public transport. But we're humans and we're prone to going back to our normal ways. So if that, 6-week period didn't change people and organizations to implement change for the long run, things go back to normal. So I think this time round, everybody's working from home and companies have started implementing a lot of infrastructure for people to work home. So therefore not maybe changing their travel patterns and their working patterns so that they might not be going to work as often, and you might be working 1 or 2 days from home. It might allow some kind of bias to be removed, because sometimes getting to places was of a disadvantage to those that are not able to travel, and therefore holding more meetings and doing more decision making virtually might be a good option going forward. So I think it's definitely going to impact how many people are traveling. I mean, the whole notion of mobility as a service is shared mobility, encouraging people to use either public transport or shared pods or autonomous vehicles, picking people up and taking them to a central point. And until people feel comfortable being surrounded by other people, that's going to have a slow shift. But changing people's patterns and changing actually work employers' perceptions. A lot of the time, what we're experiencing now wasn't a CEO-led decision. There's a lot of organizations out there whose CEOs haven't been like, you know what, I'm going to implement these working from home or flexible working time patterns. And sometimes the control is in our hand to shift that peak, but we don't, because it's not at the forefront of our minds. And we have to have something like a natural disaster come in for us to change our ways. And that shouldn't be the case. So hopefully this will encourage more companies to do the right thing, because it's not just in the best interest of their employees, it's in the best interest of their profit and the business as a whole.
Okay, now talking of which though, John, of course, we can do a lot of things remotely, but events, and especially events where you have discussion and a large amount of networking, that's still going to be an important thing, because while we can do lots of things digitally, we're only 2 weeks into the stay-at-home message, and people are already going a bit stir-crazy. So I mentioned that you're looking ahead to the symposium, which takes place in September, and you're very much keen to make sure that people are booking and planning for the symposium as we get back to whatever the new normal will be afterwards. But that's kind of essential, that events like you're planning do go ahead for the face-to-face type of things. But are you concerned that we may have a struggle with that when we come to it in September?
Well, obviously it's a concern, but I mean, just to give you a bit of history about the symposium. I mean, the first one was in 1996, and this is actually going to be the 25th symposium. It's a pretty unique event, and as you say, it's something that, whilst there would be ways of doing this sort of thing remotely, you could film the presentations, you could people could view this online, etc. But what you would lose would be the essential element, which is actually the networking. And as I say, this will be the 25th symposium this year. We are very, very keen to get this on. I mean, just to show you how far we are actually along the line already. We've already got 14 of the 20 odd papers agreed. We've currently got 20 exhibitors actually booked to come. Everything is lined up there. We desperately want to get the event on. It would be almost inconceivable that we wouldn't be able to run it, other than the fact that people weren't confident to come, or that there were restrictions from government. Even if the restrictions are lifted, then we also know that people are going to probably be making decisions to book quite late, and potentially not coming as well. So what we have done to try and give the event, if you like, the best chance possible of going ahead, we've negotiated a deal with the providers, Nottingham Trent University, to relax the cancellation terms, and we're passing that on to our exhibitors and our delegates. So, for example, what we're actually saying is that regarding the exhibitors, we want you to keep your bookings. We really want to put this event on for you, but basically you can leave your bookings with us, and any time up until the 14th of August. If you pull out before the 14th of August, then what we will do is we will basically give you a full refund if you've already paid, or we won't charge you, and we'll also drop all the administration charges. But we're making the same offer open to delegates as well, so they can book up until the 14th of August. If they want to pull out, that's fine, they can have their money back. But then what we will do, because obviously we've got to make sure we've got a viable event, following that 14th of August deadline, on the 18th of August, that is when we will make a decision on whether or not the symposium is going to go ahead, which is due, by the way, for the 22nd and 23rd of September. If at that point we decide that we've got to pull the event, then again, everybody is just going to get their money back. Now, I think we have to proceed in that fashion, because so many people, including people like Peter, have already put effort into this. I know that Peter's down for the moment. I believe that you've already got an exhibition stand booked, and indeed due to deliver a joint paper on Smart Radar. People are putting a lot of effort into this, and we really don't want to break that connection. We don't want to have a year when we don't have the symposium. So we're going to move heaven and earth to actually do this. But at the end of the day, we've got to be convinced that, of course, people are going to be safe, and also that we're going to have the restrictions aren't going to be there, and also that we've got enough people to make the event viable. But you can have an assurance from JCT that even if we only get close to be breaking even, we will put the event on, because I don't want to break that legacy of 25 years of symposium.
Okay, now, of course, that could have an effect on your cash flow. So Peter touched on this earlier, which is going back to the businesses, both small and large. You furloughed your staff, Peter. You've put them on 80% of the salary, but the government's going to reimburse you on that, but you haven't got that money yet. You've got potential costs like the symposium, other things that you're going to want to spend money on while the money isn't coming in. Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, talked about loans that being made available to business and businesses getting loans on favourable terms with far fewer questions asked. Is this as good as it sounds, and is it fit for purpose for a business like yours?
It should be. It should be, Paul, and we were very encouraged when we heard the Chancellor talk about it. But however, the mistake the government's made is, in my opinion, they've handed it to the banks without clear guidelines of how it's supposed to happen. And you've seen the press recently; it's been on the national press about the way the banks have handled this to date. And I actually put something on LinkedIn the other day. It's an absolute. My experience so far is it's an absolute nonsense. The banks have said that if you want a business interruption loan, then if you're eligible for a normal loan, first of all, you should go through that route. Most businesses don't want a normal loan if they can get away with it. What they're looking for is the business interruption loan scheme. And the banks are saying, okay, well, you're eligible for the business interruption loan scheme as long as you can prove to us that your business is viable in 4 months' time when you've had no revenue. Well, that's the reason we're looking for the loan under the business improvement loan scheme. Yeah, so it's almost like a catch-22 scenario, and I think it's a nightmare scenario. In fact, I was talking to my accountant on Friday, and he actually said to me, "Look at the press." He said over 100,000 businesses have applied to their various banks, their high street banks, for the business improvement loan scheme, and only 1,000 to date have actually been approved. Now that speaks volumes, Paul. And also, like John, we've been asked to organise a conference this year as well on behalf of the Road Tunnel Operators Forum, and that was supposed to happen this month. Is now going to happen in October. We were very fortunate with the hotel where we were having it. They've allowed us to move it to October. Yeah, and we got fingers crossed that that's going to happen as well. It's not as big as JCT. It's only sort of 80, 90 people, but it's an important conference for that particular industry sector.
But part of the frustration, actually, though, Peter, is the fact that I know that a lot of the work that you do is on the network. It involves potentially closing lanes, even closing entire carriageways. It's such a frustration that we haven't got a situation where there can be safe working conditions where we actually get out onto the network and get the work done now when the volume of traffic is so much lower than it was, than is normal, that we could be getting this done with the minimum amount of disruption.
Yeah, and interestingly, Paul, again, talking to Highways England on Friday and another conference call I had, they said the volumes of traffic are down to 7% of their norm at the moment, which is amazing, really. And yes, you're right. I mean, there are companies out there that are providing essential maintenance, for example, that are on call out, people like Talent and others that do get called out. I've kind of said at a push, if anybody needs our services, then we're available as well. You can furlough people in and out of your business if you require. So if there was something pressing, I could get my engineers back out again. But again, I struggle, and I think Krishna touched on it earlier. I struggle with the safety aspect of this because at the end of the day, if you're working in a road tunnel, for example, by the very nature of what you're doing, you're working alongside other colleagues. So it is difficult. It's a difficult situation. It's a difficult situation to be in. And the schemes that we've had put on hold at the moment are schemes, the two for the Canals and River Trust, for example, where we were putting in a new IP network for them. And that would have meant working with their staff, with the main contractor and our staff around a very pretty scenario around a canal, but nonetheless all working in close harmony.
Okay, well, interestingly though, because I can see all four of us on screen at the same time, John was nodding vigorously there when I was making that suggestion, and your comment back, Peter. So John, what was your thought on that?
Well, it's interesting, but I can't say that anybody saw this coming. But obviously, we were looking at this several weeks ago and thinking about the possibility of a lockdown. And it was actually Paul Moore, my co-director, who said, "Well, if we do go into lockdown, You know, the government are going to have to find some sort, the Chancellor's going to have to find some sort of fiscal stimulus. This is up before all the, you know, the furloughing money and things like this. And he actually said, you know, one thing they could really think about doing is bringing forward the funding for the major infrastructure projects, because things like the railways and the highways are going to be a heck of a lot safer to work on with hardly any disruption to the travelling public. And that would have been a way of putting money into the economy, but in the right way. Where it was going into the hands of the companies, who it's going out in wages, it's the multiplier effect. This is proper investment, so bringing forward that investment. So we were actually sort of, you know, discussing that and saying we thought that might be a good idea. Now, obviously, the government's had to, you know, go into serious debt or having to borrow a lot of money to try and keep everybody sort of ticking over. I think what I'd always rather see is a positive investment rather than sort of firefighting and trying to keep people, you know, alive by their sort of bootstraps. But I do appreciate that it's, you know, this is the sort of thing you could only do if it is safe to do so. So it's not, you know, it's not going to be a solution in all cases. But I think a bit of creative thinking from the government like that in advance could have actually potentially kept a lot of businesses, indeed like Peter's, ticking over and running. And everything else that it will generate going along with it. You know, there are a lot of supply companies, a lot of ancillary firms that could have potentially decided not to furlough staff and then not have to dip into that public pot. I mean, we've actually taken a decision that we aren't furloughing at the moment. But what we are doing, a bit like Krishna was saying, we are aggressively going out there and pursuing different areas of business. And at the end of it, I think what you will finish up with, a little bit like the last recession, is the companies who really sort of like push themselves out there and start creating new business. When we springboard off the other end of this crisis, I mean, we're hoping that what we're going to be is we're going to be leaner and we're going to be fitter, and we're also going to have picked up a heck of a lot more clients. So that is my hope at the moment. You know, everybody's working flat out. You know, the mantra is, as indeed Peter said, cash is king. You know, get the business through the door. And that's the reason why we've taken the decision up to now, certainly not to furlough.
Okay, so fortunately we have a marketing expert on our panel today who's going to give us and finish off this webinar with some words of wisdom on whatever size business you are, Krishna. How can you keep yourself relevant in front of people and hopefully finding new business as well during this difficult time?
I think now is the new era of digitalization. So a lot of companies have already switched to things like Zoom, WebExes, those kinds of things, to still maintain their relationships, meetings, whether it's internal communications or external communications. But I think social media is where the future is currently. I think the way to stay relevant, no matter what the size of your business is use your voice through the company from social media. Let your customers know, whoever they are, that you're thinking of them, you're there to support them. Lead with empathy, lead with understanding and compassion, and don't go too aggressively in terms of pitching. Nobody's looking for a sales pitch at the minute. Nobody wants to be sold to. There's people dying. There's people who's been unemployed. There's people that are going through financial difficulties, people that are suffering from this illness, agencies losing money left, right, center, so they can't afford new schemes. They just want to get through this crucial moment in time. And I think social media is such a good way for any agent, any company of any size, to get the message out and stay relevant through doing thought leadership pieces. You know, if you do have products or services or information that you think can help people, it's a different way of how you're presenting your information. Instead of being pitch and sales heavy, now is the time to be kind of more customer centric. And I think when we're marketing and selling products, every company is different. Some are strategy led, some are marketing led, some are sales led, some are customer led, but very, very infrequently we've become really truly customer led. And I think now's the time for everybody to put the customer back at being the center of all the decisions we're making and how we're messaging what it is that we're trying to do. And so something as simple from saying, you know, buy a contactless system because it's innovative and it's amazing. It's actually saying, hey, in a generation, in a sorry, in an era where we're trying to not come into contact with people, and we're trying to become a cashless society where people are encouraged to not pay with cash. You go to the supermarkets and they're encouraging you to pay by your bank cards, pay by contactless technologies. That technology is becoming crucial now to how people are interacting with one another. So it's how is that technology going to help people and industries from staying safe and still being able to conduct their business. And it's changing the messaging. You don't have to be sales focused, but change to see how your products and capabilities can help people in a time like this, and why it's needed either now, or how you're working with the customer or your partners to think of products and solutions that agencies might need after the math, and working with them and doing, whether it's, you know, industry-wide hackathons or doing these kinds of webinars with people in the industry. And whilst we can't do those face-to-face conferences, which we all love, and, you know, the networking, why can't we do a digital hackathon? Why can't we get the best of the people within our organizations that might not have been able to go to these events actually now be able to participate and be the voice of your company? So really, it's a time where we can step up, we can start positioning people within our own organizations to have a voice, encourage your own teams to personally put things out on social media, because the one key thing is people don't interact with companies, they interact with each other. So if Cubic is putting a post out saying, oh, this is a great thing that's happening in the industry, nobody's really going to comment and like on it. They're not really going to engage with it. But as soon as I might repost that and say, hey, this is really cool, other people like Paul might, you know, comment and be starting a dialogue. So put the person back into the whole scope of whatever it is that you're doing. And
Okay,
let's come through it together.
Yeah, and to therefore get a plug in for ITS UK at the end of this, don't forget that you can comment on this. You can join our LinkedIn discussion on our LinkedIn group. All the details are on the screen at the end of this webinar. So thank you very much to Krishna from Cubic, to John from JCT, and Peter from Smart Video and Sensing. And John and Peter, definitely let's keep that date in Nottingham in September for the JCT Traffic Signal Symposium.
Let's hope so.
Let's hope so, definitely.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching this webinar. We'll be back after the Easter break with another discussion on the effects of coronavirus on the ITS and wider transport industry. And we'll be having more webinars in place of our usual forum meetings in the weeks and months to come here from ITS UK. For now, thank you very much for watching.